answers that you're looking for? Or lying just beyond the frame?
Hello everyone, I am your host Ryan Vanderhei. I am a writer, director, and longtime cinephile. And to my left is my co-host, whose name, last I checked, was Joe.
Last I checked too.
Yeah, good to see you're still Joe. Yeah, that's great.
It's true. It's true. Good to see you, man.
The body snatchers haven't gotten you yet.
Not yet.
You're still there. Good to see you, man.
You too.
On today's episode of Beyond the Frame, we're talking about the 2025 blockbuster film F1, the movie.
Blockbuster. It is, though.
It is. It's gonna kill.
Yeah.
Directed by Joseph Kosinski and starring Brad Pitt, Damson Idris, Javier Bardem, and Kerry Condon.
Love her.
The theme from the film we're going to break down is finding common ground. So spoiler alert here. If you haven't seen the movie, we are going to talk about spoilers. So go watch it, come back, listen to the rest of the app. Before the facts, we got to talk about some specifics here.
Okay.
That are very specific. The fact that Sonny Hayes was basically the Messiah in this really bothered me.
Me too.
This guy came in and was like, he was immediately a god. Everyone listened to him, even the team principals. It's your strategy. What do you want to do with the car?
That he's driving and dictating strategy.
It's insane. If you know anything about F1,
you know, now I'm really regretting that I'd said what I said earlier.
I was very surprised when you said that. I get what you're saying.
I spoke too soon. I haven't talked with anyone about. This is the first time I've talked with anybody about the movie.
No, but I understand what you meant, though.
Okay.
That they stuck true to a lot of the ins and outs of Formula One, the strategy, the team meetings, the debriefs, the PR. They really did a good job.
Even how you use pit strategy, how you use how important aerodynamics are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are particulars that are very specific to F1.
And they dialed in those elements.
And they really
well.
did.
Yeah.
But when it came to what happened in the race, you're right. It became fiction.
Yeah. I just thought it was so far-fetched and unrealistic. Everyone just immediately started listening to this guy who hasn't been in an F1 car in 30
years. And he'd never won a race
either. It's not like he was a multiple champion that came back.
This wasn't, I shouldn't use Michael Schumacher, but because he's not capable.
This wasn't
now,
Lewis Hamilton who retired and then came back. Right. We'd all be like, oh shit.
Right.
To him.
But if Lewis had retired 30 years before.
Right.
And came back. That part was such a suspense of disbelief that it was hard for me to take.
Yeah, he's like, and he helped everyone, which I didn't like either. He helps the girl. That's the.
Yeah, but she told him, "I wish you hadn't done that."
Yeah,
which I actually liked.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
he's telling her what to do. He's telling them the strategy. The team principal doesn't even do his job. He's just listening to him. He tells Kerry how to design the car. He tells Damson how to do the turn. He was just the Messiah. It was like he was the guy.
And for a guy to sit down for a few seconds and have somebody brief him on, here's how you drive this car. Here's what all these buttons mean. Here's what this means. And then for him to granted, he did get out and he spun it out his first time, and then he crashed it.
Yeah.
And I liked that they did that. I liked that they had him crash out.
Okay.
You know, first time out, that's pretty freaking realistic. But the fact that he comes away as cocky as he did, and there are good things to take away from this. That was hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage that he just did, and he walked away in such a blasé way. Boy, it's really making me regret what I said earlier.
Yeah, so this one's really gonna make you regret it. So
I'm gonna eat so much crow here.
I talked to a buddy of mine. They filmed this in F2 cars that were made to look like F1 cars.
Okay.
Why? And I didn't know this either. I asked him. F2 cars are much less expensive.
Oh, and much less expensive.
And easier to drive.
Yeah.
But you can probably get they're probably, I don't know, $1 million or $2 million per car. A Formula One car costs upwards of $150 million. So, in the first race, he decides Sonny Hayes he's got an edge to him, and he's going to crash into people purposefully to aid his teammate. He's caught. They go through multiple front wings, multiple tire.
Yeah,
that would be upwards of the tens of millions of dollars in damage, and the team would have said goodbye
and
immediately.
Right. Well, because they would have been fined. They would have been penalized.
And this is a team that's at the back of the grid. They don't have money.
Yeah, true.
They're broke.
True.
This is a Haas.
True.
They're broke. They
True.
can't afford that. If something happens in the race, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah.
He's purposely crashing into people to help that would be an immediate ejection from the sport. You'd never see a race car again.
So agreed. So you and I have a feel for F1.
Mm-hmm.
What about the person who's going to this movie and has no feel for F1? They freaking love that stuff.
Absolutely. This is one of the things I talked about with my girlfriend and with my friend that's a fan. If you don't know anything about Formula One, you'll love this movie. You'll eat it up. You'll love it. It's Brad, it's Damson, it's Javier, it's the score, it's the way it was shot, like Top Gun, the drama, the sports energy.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it. You're gonna eat it up. Mm-hmm. But if you're and Carlos Sainz said this at the premiere. Somebody asked him. They were like, "What do you think of the movie?" Because they all the drivers went to like the premiere in New York or London or whatever.
Okay.
And I saw a clip of Carlos, and they asked him, and he goes, "Well, fans of F1, keep this in mind. Just be open to Hollywood."
Yeah.
And I was like, he knows.
Yeah,
he
does.
He's in the cars. He's been doing this for a long time. A lot of it, if you're a fan, if you know the ins and outs of racing and Formula One, you got to overlook a lot of stuff.
You do. And if you think about it, like the stuff that the tactics that Brad Pitt uses as Sonny are so radically unrealistic. And if you think about what happens in a race, there might not be a whole ton of drama beyond when do they pit? Are they using soft, medium, or hard tires? Is it raining? These kinds of things are going to be very subtle.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be very dramatic unless you are an F1 fan.
Totally.
So that's where I had to just, again, suspend disbelief.
And that totally makes sense.
And ride along with it.
I should say I enjoyed this film.
Yeah,
I had fun. I enjoyed it. I came away with it entertained and excited. And I'm not at all, I know I just decimated this thing. I know we just both picked this thing apart. But I think that's more of being a fan and being picky and really being meticulous about the details about F1. That being said, I'd watch it again. And I would enjoy it.
Yeah.
So don't let that deter you.
Exactly.
Sorry about that. We just kind of roast this thing. On to the fun facts, shall we?
Okay, yeah, please.
The first being Brad and Damson are actually driving the cars in this film. They were driving Formula 2 cars, which are less powerful, but nonetheless, they were reaching speeds upwards of 180 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Very impressive.
This added to the realism of the driving sequences. We're not watching someone against a green screen.
Right.
We're watching someone actually drive
Yeah.
the car at those speeds.
Really cool.
And hats off to Damson and to Brad.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to get into a car like that, and I'm sure they had training, and I'm sure they were
did.
studied, but as a casual person who might drive their car 60 miles per hour on the freeway, to get into a car like that and drive it at 180 is very impressive.
For sure. I saw a little, not round table, but there were 4 of the actors who were in the movie, the 4 leads. And Brad Pitt was saying that he did a little bit of a training at a racetrack outside of Los Angeles, and Lewis came into town, and Brad got on the circuit, on the track. And he said on the way home from the track, at one point he looked down and he was doing 110 miles an hour on the freeway. He's like, oh my God.
I imagine that would be the effect, If you've ever gone 100, 110 in a car, it feels
different,
unimaginably insane.
Yeah.
Double that. I can't, that's something I can't even wrap my brain around going that fast. And these guys are doing it every weekend.
Oh yeah.
For
Amazing.
an hour and a half, 2 hour race.
Yeah, exactly.
God, athletes, man. Second, according to an interview with producer Jerry Bruckheimer, it took a year to convince both the FIA, the organizer of F1 races, and the 10 teams to be able to film the actual F1 teams and drivers.
Not surprising.
on the actual
Not
tracks
surprising at all.
and during the actual
There's
race
so much
weekends.
money.
Oh,
at
there's so
stake.
much money. There's so many like sponsors, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things involved. So again, this is
A
unprecedented.
year
No
is
one's
impressive.
yeah, truly.
You know?
truly
Yeah.
to go into an actual team that's actually in their season is just bizarre.
Because every place matters. It
Totally.
matters that you get 10th and not 11th. You have to be in the points range. You only get points if you're in the top 10. But also, I thought about that with other sponsors like IWC, which I aspire to buy one. But they were kind of prominent to me.
Yeah.
And at least one of them was wearing an IWC watch. And I thought, do they stand behind this? Well, they're going to have to.
Sure, 100%.
So, boy, for them to get all that permission a year, impressive.
Yeah.
Very
A concern
impressive.
by the Red Bull team
Yeah.
that was that they would probably be depicted as the villain, given that the Mercedes team built the car that they race in the movie. But driver Hamilton was added as a producer to the movie and thus was able to kind of like...
Smooth things out.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That it convinced the Red Bull people to, okay, we can continue with this. The FIA nor the actual teams would be put in a bad light. Dude.
And they weren't.
And they weren't.
There was no villain
Nobody
here.
was ever, no.
No.
So, as I mentioned before,
Yeah.
Joe, the theme I wanted to explore today, finding common ground.
Okay.
We all probably maybe have experience with that, hopefully. I like this theme, and I like when it's explored in movies. I think that it is just inherently interesting watching two people who think they are opposites of one another find what actually makes them similar.
And you're talking about the two drivers in this case.
Right. Sonny
Yeah.
Hayes and Joshua Pierce
Yep.
are two leads who are the teammates at Apex GP.
Right.
And
Well done.
they come in seemingly at the start, poles apart. Decades separate them. Josh is more flashy, more cocky.
Yeah.
Sonny's more reserved and more...
Old school.
Yeah, he's like the old school guy.
Yeah.
However, during a scene where Kate tricks them to a poker game, this is where they sort of find their common ground, which is a little silly. That they the way that they both is like, when'd you lose your dad? 13, and they both,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah, exactly.
we're not so different, you and I. Again, I'll suspend disbelief here a bit, but I did like that I could see on both of them in that scene, in that moment, in that evening together, that they both were kind of like,
They played it really well.
okay, maybe we're
They did
not
play it well.
as
Yeah.
different as we thought. There are some things.
It's not
that-
like bring it in and hug it out, and I liked that about it. It
Yeah.
didn't make them like brothers,
yeah, it wasn't unrealistic.
but the ice melted a bit,
Yeah, they were able to kind of see through their
Yeah.
preconceived notions and
sure.
judgments they had made on each other up until that point.
Well, and we
He's
could
an old timer. He's an asshole.
and we could understand why he would say that because he
100%.
was right.
And we can understand why Brad would be
That's
like, this
right,
kid doesn't know
because
what
he
he's
was
doing.
really cocky.
He's
and
cocky. He's
yeah,
flashy.
They were both. You could see their perspectives.
Totally.
You know?
Totally. I think, that this was probably the beginning of where I started to see those layers kind of come back, which I really appreciated. It might be subtle, but it's interesting how one piece of information can change how you see someone. Now not as your polar opposite, but as someone you can relate to at least in one way.
Yep.
I'm curious, Joe. Have you ever found common ground with and become friends or dated anyone that at first impression you thought you were the poles apart from?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do
wow.
tell.
Someone just popped into mind.
I love that.
I have a good friend I've known since I was 9 years old, and we're still good friends. I saw him on my last trip up north.
Okay.
And he and I went to college in different places, and he had a really good friend from where he was going to school. And I met this really good friend of his, and I didn't get it. I really didn't get it.
Okay.
And then we all went to my friend's parents still have a cabin up at Tahoe, and we were up there one summer, and we were 21 years old, and we were playing beer pong, which was different back then. It was actual ping pong. Anyway,
It was actual ping pong?
Yeah,
Like with
when
a
people
paddle?
say beer, and we called it beer pong. So you have a cup on the table, and you're trying to hit the other guy's cup. And if you sink it in the cup, they have to drink the whole thing.
Interesting.
But if you hit the cup, they have to take a sip. So so we're playing ping pong, and you're just trying to hit the other person's cup.
Okay.
You got to use some skill,
Sure,
you know?
sure.
There's actual skill involved.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just still didn't get it. And at one point, he and I are sitting up on this landing, and I was a poli-sci major, and I was really into it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was too. And then we start talking. I was like, oh, this cat's smart, and he knows his stuff.
Huh.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, like and now we are good friends. He lives here in LA, and he these two guys threw my 60th birthday party.
Wow. So you're close friends.
Yeah. And I dig the guy, but that was such an eye opener of like, we had this common ground. And then I realized he's really smart. He's actually pretty contemplative. And that segued into other things. And it just kind of was like a domino effect of like, wow, we've got a lot in common.
So how soon after that experience, that interaction that you had on the landing at that party, how soon after that were you guys close?
It still took a little bit of time, but later he ended up going to law. I was living in San Francisco, and he was too. And so it took a few years after we both graduated, moved to San Francisco, that we became closer friends.
Interesting, man.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So absolutely I have. What about you?
I too, I mean, of course, I've probably got plenty of them, but one too, I've got a good friend. His name is Alex, and he is, extroverted. He's loud. He's outgoing. He's a lot of the things that are the opposite of myself. I mean, I'm more introverted, quiet, reserved kind of person. Go with the flow. But he and I are now and have been good friends for almost 20 years.
Nice.
Because, we were young when we first met, and we had these commonalities, we were into sports, video games, girls, music.
Yeah.
So we just really clicked on all of those fronts. And then it was like, it wasn't, because when I first met him, I was like, God, this guy's loud. This guy's a bit much, and I'm always.
Which is probably true.
Which is true. And I'm always a little bit intimidated by people like that because I'm a more reserved, chill, in the background kind of guy. And I felt that when I first met him, but then we start talking and, oh my God, we have this in common and we have got that in common and we have this. So to now, we're still such good friends now. I just saw him recently. It's like, I don't even see that about him anymore. It's just, that's part of his personality. That's who he is. And I love that about him. I have like an appreciation for it now of him just being himself.
That's awesome.
And being authentic to who he is. So it is funny how just like one or two things you can just somebody who you think, God, we're so different, you and I, and then boom, actually maybe we're not, and then you become friends or you date or whoever it is. It's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, and I agree. And to watch that happen in this movie was good. And again, part of what to me felt realistic was this didn't make them automatically tight. But it gave them enough common
time.
It still took time.
But they started to kind of okay.
And it did take
and they start working together a bit, and it's a team sport, that kind of
it is
comes
and it's
through.
not, which is a delicate balance in F1. I like the fact that Pierce went back and looked at Sonny's history and saw how badly his body was broken in the crash that killed his F1 career. Didn't kill him, but it killed his career.
Yeah.
And the fact that he came back from that, which is thoroughly unrealistic, but great for the movie.
Yeah.
And I like that it gave him an element of, okay, wow, this guy's been through a lot. I should probably give him some respect for that.
And he had come across his own crash and had burned his hands and everything. So I think he, again, a little thing that they're able to relate.
Yes.
To him. He understands where I'm coming from, what I'm feeling, what I've been through. And so there's a commonality there. Yeah, I do like that it was, it took some time. It wasn't an immediate, we're boys now.
Exactly.
It's still even towards, it's like the end. By the end, I think they saw each other eye to eye and there was a level of respect. But even still, they weren't.
Even still, the way they
brothers.
said goodbye was not very personal.
Later Swan, yeah.
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 I mean, it was
a lot of bookends in this. Too many bookends. Too many callbacks.
That's a good point.
I liked some of them, but there was I like the when they're celebrating after Sonny's win, which didn't think he should have won.
I totally agree with that.
But they're celebrating the win, and then him and Javier, his character, are like, "We're the best in the world" or something like that. I like that bookend, but there was too many callbacks where I'm going, all right, I don't need this.
Well, and that's to make us feel like we're in on the inside joke,
Right?
you know,
Of course.
which is so blockbustery.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I was talking to my girlfriend about the Sonny winning the last race, and it was very unexpected.
That was.
So we have to give
credit for that.
there. I mean, Kaczynski did that in Top Gun as well. Like, it's not who you think it is. Which I can respect, but just I so wanted I felt the emotion of when Sonny's in the car and he's like, "Go win it, kid," or something like that. I felt that so strongly, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And then he crashes out and everything, and I'm kind of like, so Sonny's just the Messiah again, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Always. And then he's flying. The whole on the pit wall. What's he doing?
He's flying.
He's flying.
Yeah.
Again, I get it. This is before we get into the end here. Sorry. One last thing. I read that there's a lot of comparisons between this film and Ford versus Ferrari. If you've seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari with James Mangold.
Yep.
And I read that the first director attached to that project, the Ford versus Ferrari project, Mr. Joe Kaczynski.
Okay. Interesting.
Things happen, whatever, it falls down. You know, he can't do it. It goes to James Mangold. Thank God. He made a fantastic and brilliant film.
Yeah, he did.
It's a better version of this if you haven't seen it. But I saw a lot of similarities between, like, even that he's flying. Because there's a whole thing. That's like the whole through line in Ford versus Ferrari is.
Good point.
There's a point, 5,000 RPM, where it fades away and you just, it's just you moving through, a body moving through space. And I love that. And then here it's like, there's a point in the car where I'm flying. And I just went.
Supposedly, I think that came from Lewis Hamilton, who was actually like being in the zone. I think if I got that correctly, Brad Pitt kind of got that from a Lewis Hamilton kind of zen kind of state. Who knows?
Makes sense.
I might just be starting a rumor.
I get it. Hey, I respect it.
But
I
I get what you're
appreciate
saying, too.
Lewis's involvement. Brad said in the interview with Dax that he was super involved, where he would even come into like the editing bay and go, that at turn 12, you wouldn't be in fourth gear, you'd be in fifth gear.
Oh,
That should sound different.
So, okay, that almost redeems me a little bit because there are things that are super realistic about
Super
it.
dialed in, and I think Lewis had a massive hand in that, and I really appreciate that. Really gained a lot of respect for Lewis from this. Already, all the respect in the world for that guy, but the fact that he produced this.
He is amazing.
He was such a massive part of it.
Yeah.
In bringing new fans to the sport in this way.
Yeah.
Just such a guy.
Yeah.
So if you enjoyed the movie F1 and you want to see more like it, here's 5 you can stream right now. For a movie about American car designer Carroll Shelby and driver Ken Miles taking on Ferrari at Le Mans under Ford's banner, check out the 2019 film Ford versus Ferrari, now available on Hulu. For a movie about a cocky young NASCAR driver navigating rivalry, romance, and redemption on the track, check out the 1990 film Days of Thunder, now available on Paramount Plus. For a film about the fierce real-life rivalry between Formula One drivers James Hunt and Niki Lauda, check out the 2013 film Rush, now available on Amazon. And for a film about a getaway driver trying to escape the life of crime while orchestrating high-octane heists to the beat of his own soundtrack, check out the 2017 film Baby Driver.
So good.
Now available on Hulu. Love that one.
So
Last and certainly but not least, I have to mention this. For a documentary about legendary Brazilian Formula One driver Ayrton Senna and the relentless pursuit of greatness, check out the 2010 documentary Senna, now available on Netflix.
What
that will move you to absolute tears.
If it doesn't, there's something wrong with you.
The Brazilian people are so passionate and so
understandable.
They just get behind their people, and they're so moved, and it just moves you to see people that move.
He was an absolute phenom.
Oh, he was the greatest Formula One driver of all time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, gone too soon.
Yep.
So what did we learn from watching F1, Joe? That Sonny Hayes is in fact the second coming of Jesus Christ, Muhammad, and Buddha. He is the great white buffalo. He is the guy. There isn't any problem he can't solve, nor a question he doesn't have an answer to. But what we really learned is that no matter how different you seem from someone when you first meet them, underneath the surface might lie something that creates a common ground between the two of you. In other words, first impressions aren't everything after all. Thank you so much for joining us today, and remember, as always, you're the main character in your own life. So don't be afraid to take a step back and take a look at the bigger picture, because sometimes the answers that you've been looking for, they're lying just beyond the frame.
True that.
We'll see you next time. Peace.